so it will be available. So thank you all again so much for joining us for our workshop today. My name is Eilish Russell, and I am the Career Advisor with Career and Professional Development. As mentioned, I'm joined by my colleague, Shay Seymour. She's going to be dropping some fantastic links and resources in the chat as we go through, so check those out, please, if you're interested. Today, we're going to be talking about preparing for your creative career. Now, this is specifically within the guise of graduating students. So we're going to be talking about things that you can do in your graduating term specifically, and kind of what mindset and what framework we want to set up for ourselves to feel excited, not too overwhelmed, and have the most successful kind of process as we're preparing to graduate as possible. If you're not a graduating student, but you're just excited to be here and get some info early, welcome and thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad that you're thinking ahead and know that you have maybe a slightly different timeline, but you can fit all of these things in as you go. So let's take a look at what we have to talk about today. So first and foremost, we're going to be talking a little bit about developing a strategy. This is going to look a little bit different for everyone, and I'm going to give us some prompts to start thinking about what that strategy can look like. We're going to talk about preparing our materials. What materials should we be preparing? Why are they important? How do they all fit in together? Another big question. Then we're going to be talking about networking a little bit, the importance of networking, how we can do it, and how it fits into kind of our larger process. Then we're going to be talking a little bit about grad show, and I'm going to be talking about grad show from the perspective of how it's important for your professional development and how you can make use of it as a professional development opportunity. And then finally, we're going to have a nice little Q&A at the end. Now, as far as questions are concerned, if you would like to drop questions in the chat as we go, you're welcome to. I'm also happy to kind of stop and take a moment in between each section if there are some questions that we'd like to go through. As mentioned, I am recording this workshop, so if you'd like to unmute yourself to ask a question, you're absolutely welcome to. Just know that it will be recorded, and I'll cut the recording at the end of my presentation, so you will have an opportunity to unmute and ask a question yourself if you would like to without being recorded then. So with that said, let's get us started and talking about developing a strategy. So your graduating term is a fantastic time to solidify a career development strategy. And you're going to notice that I used the words career development strategy and not job search strategy, because for everyone in this room, for all of the different departments and majors and concentrations and goals that we have here, not everyone is going to be looking for specifically a job. Some folks are going to be looking for career advancement that looks slightly different. So what I really want to do is encourage everybody, whether you're graduating this term or not, to start thinking about developing your strategy as if you were answering a design brief or presenting a project for a class. Your brief here is that you want to find a fulfilling role that supports the life that you want to live in whatever capacity that looks like for you. And the process of developing that strategy is, what are the steps that it takes to get to that role, right? And much like working with a design brief or completing a project for a class that we have, there are a lot of different steps that goes into developing this strategy. We don't just say, this is what I'm doing, and then we do it. We start thinking about a few different areas. We want to do some research. We want to identify areas where we might need a little bit of support and assistance. We want to identify what's possible and maybe what's a little bit less possible or realistic within the confines or the timeline that we have. So I want to present us with some strategic areas that we might want to explore and kind of think about as we're preparing for this particular piece in our puzzle here in line for graduation. So some areas that we might want to explore. Let's ask ourselves, what are our priorities? Our priorities are, again, going to look a little bit different depending on the department that we're in, what our industry looks like, and what our own personal goals are. Our priorities could be something like, I'm looking for financial stability because I want to pay my rent and support myself. My priorities could be, I'm looking for a role that satisfies me artistically, and I'm a little bit less concerned about what my compensation package looks like. Our priorities could be, I want to travel the world and I want to find a role or a type of career opportunity that allows me to travel whenever I want to and wherever I want to. So I don't want any kind of confines on my time and my location. Once we've identified some of our priorities, I really want us to think about whether there are any inconsistencies with these priorities or any opportunities where we might have to compromise. For example, do we really want to work for a company that is in office? For example, we've decided that we want to work for company A, but company A has a work from office policy, but we also really want to travel the world. What are the opportunities there where we might be able to do both of those things? Are we going to have to potentially compromise or sacrifice one of those areas? Or can we find an area where both of those things can kind of align and cohabitate together for us to find the ideal opportunity? Once we've identified any inconsistencies or potential opportunities to compromise, I want us to ask ourselves, are there currently open roles that align with my priorities and align with the direction and the skills that I want to take myself in? And what I mean by this is a simple doing a Google search, checking on LinkedIn, checking on a variety of different job boards, which we have a whole list of on the CPD website, for are the roles that I'm looking for with the priorities that I have currently available to me in my industry? If the answer to that is yes, then you're in a great place. You have potential opportunities that you can start applying for once you're developing your materials. If you find that the answer to that question is no, perhaps the priorities that you have do not directly align with the open roles that are available in your industry at this particular time for one reason or another. Perhaps your industry is really moving to in-person, but you really want to work remotely, or vice versa. You really want to be in person working with a team, but everybody's working remotely in your industry. What does that mean for you? How does this change your potential job search strategy? Another great way to kind of ask this particular question or consider whether the roles available align with your priorities is with freelance work. Are you somebody who is looking to work in-house in a kind of full-time role within the scope of a company? Is that particularly common in your industry? Or does your role in your industry typically have freelance roles where the type of work that you're doing is not so much in-house, but freelance role? These are really great questions to start asking ourselves early so that we can, again, consider our priorities, consider any potential adjustments that we need to make, or additional considerations that we have when developing our job search. This helps us not be, for example, surprised by the type of opportunities that are available in our industry once we've graduated and are actively job searching. Or if we're actively job searching now, it really helps us align the rest of our search process to make the most of that experience. A next kind of strategic area to explore when we're thinking about developing this process is, what are the industry standards for hiring in the roles that I'm interested in? So for my design field, what does the hiring process look like? Are there typically something like, networking connections that are made that allow you to get into interview opportunities? Are there often multiple interviews that occur where you have to present your portfolio multiple times? Are you going to be expected to present a portfolio website versus a portfolio PDF? Are you going to be expected to produce an additional professional development document that maybe you haven't considered yet, something like an artist's CV or something along those lines? Understanding what those standards or expectations are for hiring in your industry are going to be a really, really incredible way to not feel overwhelmed once we are in the middle of that process. If we know what those standards are and we know what we need to do to meet them, then we can kind of schedule out that process into small increments and get ourselves on a good path to feel a little less overwhelmed and to be setting ourselves up for success in that hiring process. Which brings us to our last question, which is, what can you do to prepare in advance? Now, in just a minute, we're going to be talking a little bit about developing our professional materials and things like that. But there are lots of different ways that we can prepare in advance for our job search, whether that be because we are ideally looking to apply for jobs during our graduating term, or just to kind of get ourselves in a great place to launch immediately after graduation, whatever situation we find ourselves in. So some things that we can do to prepare in advance. Perhaps your industry has a lot of opportunities for portfolio reviews at the companies that are located close to you. You might want to find out, when are those portfolio reviews happening? Are they available to recent graduates? Do those portfolio reviews potentially end in an opportunity for employment, whether that be full-time or freelance? And how can you get into those portfolio reviews to really start making connections with those companies? Another question that you might be able to ask yourself in terms of preparing in advance, or another area that you might want to prepare in advance, could look like, if I want to develop a portfolio for a specific company or a resume for a specific company, what do portfolios and resumes look like for people who are currently working in that company? What types of materials did they use to apply? How can I align myself with the expectations of that company based on what I know from their current umbrella of staff? And we'll talk a little bit more about how you can find out this information shortly when we discuss networking. But you'll notice that a lot of these different areas kind of flow into each other. Preparing in advance based on all of these previous questions that we've asked ourselves can also flow into our other areas that we're talking about today, such as developing your professional materials and networking. So I'm going to open up the chat very quickly and just check to see if we have any questions related to strategic development of our professional development strategies or our professional development process. Does anybody have a question at this time? Again, you can drop it in the chat, or if you're comfortable with unmuting yourself, you're welcome to do so as well. There will be opportunity again at the end if anybody wants to ask a question, so no pressure right now. Okay, all right, I'm going to move into our next section here, but again, please feel free to throw a question in the chat or unmute yourself if you would like to. So we've talked a little bit about developing our strategy, some questions to ask ourselves. Our next area here is preparing your professional materials. I really encourage everybody, especially folks who are currently in their graduating term, to start thinking about their professional materials now, and not their professional materials once they've graduated and are immediately starting to prepare for job opportunities. Our big professional materials here are our resume, our cover letter, our About Me, our portfolio website, and our LinkedIn profile. And I'm going to talk about each of these areas independently in just a minute, but I really, really want to encourage everybody. These pieces are kind of living and growing documents as related to your professional development. Your resume, your cover letter, your portfolio website, these are all going to grow and change and shift with you as you grow and change and shift as artists and designers. And so we want to have a really strong foundation for these materials as we're preparing to graduate. We don't want to be in a scenario where we're scrambling to write up a resume or a cover letter for the first time because we found a job and the posting is expiring tomorrow, and we don't know if our resume or a cover letter or portfolio website is strong as it relates to this particular application. So please, please, please use the resources that are available to you. My colleague Shay is dropping in some info in the chat about developing your professional materials. CPD has a whole host of existing references and templates on things like resumes and cover letters and about me's. And we're also here to answer questions via career advising appointments, email reviews, etc., to really help you get a strong understanding of what makes an effective professional material for each of these areas. So let's talk a little bit about resumes and cover letters. So your resume is going to be your introduction to an employer. It presents an overall snapshot of your work, your educational experiences, your skill sets, as well as the context in which you've applied those skill sets. So what projects have you worked on? How did they go? What did you produce? What's very important to know about resumes and cover letters is that they should be tailored to the opportunities that you're applying for, which means you want to take a really good look at the individual job opportunities, the skill sets that they're looking for, the key words and phrases that are common and sought out in those job descriptions, and then utilize your resume to reflect or mirror those key words and phrases. With a cover letter, a really strong cover letter makes a strong immediate impression with your employer. It's a little bit more of a personal touch than your resume and gives you an opportunity to show off your personality, as well as provide kind of a third dimension to the skill set that you've developed and the opportunities that you've had to develop it. So not only are you answering, this is what my skill set is, but you're answering, here's how I've applied my skill set, and here's how I feel that my skill set will make me a strong fit at your company, and how I imagine growing with your company as I go. Again, because we want to be tailoring each of these pieces to the companies and the job opportunities that we're applying to, it's really important to have a strong foundation and to understand what makes a quality resume and a quality cover letter. The resources that are being linked in the chat are a great place to start. And again, I encourage everybody, schedule a career advising appointment, schedule an email review of your materials to get an understanding of where your materials are at now. And try not to wait until you're 5 minutes away from sending in a job application to take a look at and understand resume theory, so to speak, for the first time. Our next big professional material area is your About Me. So your About Me, your artist bio, your artist statement, whatever phrase you want to use to call it, all of these pieces provide context to your work and offer an opportunity to describe who you are, what you make, and what you want to do. You're going to be writing About Me's or artist statements over the course of your career. They're going to change, they're going to adjust, they're going to reflect different iterations or growth phases of your work. So know that there's going to be a little bit of an evolution here. However, as you're preparing for your job search as a recent grad or an almost grad, your About Me is going to be foundational in how you present yourself to potential employers. A really strong About Me that, again, defines who you are, what you make, what you're interested in, is a perfect way in to networking conversations, to conversations at grad show, which is a networking opportunity, as well as a strong impression on your portfolio website. Your About Me can be a variety of different tones. It can contain a variety of different information. It's really about what you would like to make out of this specific piece of your professional arsenal. So know that there's some flexibility here. But again, developing that strong About Me that says who you are, what you bring, and what you want to do is absolutely foundational in creating kind of a through line or a brand for yourself throughout the rest of these pieces. And next we have portfolio websites. So a portfolio website, or maybe more specifically a portfolio in general, is going to be one of the most important ways that you're showcasing your work. It is going to be an expected standard for a lot of industries to showcase your work in your portfolio, but it's also going to be an amazing way for you to stand out from a crowd of other applicants for a particular position if your portfolio website is strong and provides industry relevant information about the experiences and the projects that you've worked on. So again, we're going to link some resources for strong portfolio website building in the chat here. But I want to encourage everybody to think about their portfolio website not only as a document of what they've made, but also a documentation of how they've made it. Think about including descriptions of your process. Whether you are a film student or a product design student or an illustrator, how do you get from your original project brief that you are answering all the way to the end? What does your research look like if you're doing research? What does your setup or your development look like if you're doing those pieces as well? Being able to document your process, especially on your portfolio website, really helps an employer envision the way that you may potentially fit into their design process as well. And it can really make the difference between this person does great work and their design process is wonderful, versus this person does great work, but I don't really know how they did it or whether their skills align and their process aligns with what our process is as well. And finally, we have our LinkedIn profiles. And I'm going to say LinkedIn specifically, but know that this can also apply to other social media areas. So your LinkedIn profile is going to be an essential tool for staying in touch with your network, building your network, connecting with other professionals as you're preparing for grad show, as you're preparing to graduate, and as you are meeting people along the job search process after graduation. So if you do not already, I really recommend creating a LinkedIn profile as you prepare for graduation. If you already have one, then you'll know that it's a really great opportunity to connect with professionals, again, folks you meet at grad show, folks you meet at other networking events, and to stay in touch with the community that you've developed at ArtCenter. You all have an incredible list of faculty members, colleagues, staff members that you've met here, and all of these folks are part of your creative community. Do your best to stay in touch with them as much as you can. LinkedIn is going to be a great way to do this. But LinkedIn is also foundational as a resource for researching potential career paths, researching who is hired at the companies that I want to work in, and what information or what backgrounds did they bring to those companies? What do their portfolios look like? What do their resumes look like? How are they liking that particular opportunity? For anybody who's interested in all that LinkedIn can potentially provide to you as a job seeker, we have quite a few resources on the CPD website about this, and we'd also be happy to talk about it in depth in a career advising appointment. But know that it's an absolutely essential tool, and I really encourage everybody to develop a LinkedIn profile if they don't already have one, especially as you're preparing for graduation, but also before graduation as well. So those are our kind of big areas for professional material development. And again, I'm just going to take a minute here, pop into the chat to see if there are any questions about these professional materials, about developing them over the course of our final term or a final couple of terms at ArtCenter. Shay, again, has linked some incredible resources for developing these pieces, for aligning yourself with a job description and understanding these keywords. But I would be happy to answer any further questions about this whole process. Okay, I don't see any questions in the chat, which is completely okay. Again, I'm going to move on to our next big topic area, but there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end as well. Oh, we did get in one. Okay, so in terms of content, would you say that the About Me statement and a cover letter are kind of similar? This is a really, really great question. An About Me statement, I want us to think of as kind of an introduction. So some of you may have heard the term elevator pitch in the past. And an elevator pitch and an About Me are somewhat similar in the sense that it's a brief introduction to who you are and what you do. It's probably going to be a couple of sentences or a paragraph of information, and it's mostly focused on an umbrella understanding of what you do that is applicable in kind of any direction in your industry. So this could be, I am a background artist with a specific focus on medieval architecture, and I really love designing trees, right? That is kind of a brief about me. Obviously, that's not perfect because it was pulled out of my brain just now, but that's kind of the goal that we have for an About Me, right? It's an umbrella description of who we are, what we like to design. A cover letter is going to be specifically targeted to the company and the position that we're applying for, and incorporates facets of the About Me, like our skill set and what we like to do, but contextualizes them within that specific job. So what projects have we worked on? What skills have we developed? What do we like to do as it relates to this specific job opportunity? In addition, your cover letter is going to cover things like How do you feel that you are going to grow as an artist or a designer at this particular company? What is it about this opportunity that intrigues you? Have you always wanted to work for this company? Are they currently working on a project that really speaks to you and you feel like their mission and your mission as a designer really align? So you feel like you could do amazing work there. If we had to kind of compare or relate them to each other, I would say that an about me is kind of like the umbrella statement, and then a cover letter falls under that umbrella as kind of a targeted description of ourselves as it relates to a specific role. But I want us to think about them as kind of playing into each other while being separate tools within our professional development arsenal. And what I'll say is that having a really strong about me that you've written, whether it's the actual physical description, like the words that you've written, or just an about me in your brain that you understand about yourself and what you want to do, is going to make writing a cover letter a lot smoother of a process because you understand what you can bring, you understand what you like, and you understand what your passions are and what drives you as a designer. That'll help you answer a lot of those questions, like how do you expect to grow as a professional? And what about this role do you like? Or how do you find that this mission aligns with your mission as well? So I hope that answers your question. That's a really, really great one. And I think that it kind of speaks to the point that all of these pieces are all connected with each other. And you can have a really strong resume and a really strong cover letter that fit together. But it's hard to have a really strong set of any of these documents if one is maybe not as strong as the other. So we want to have them all together and spend as much time as possible developing all of them together. Okay, awesome. Any other questions before I move forward? Okay, all right, let's tackle networking, everybody's favorite topic. So networking has been and continues to play a large role in professional development. This is true for all industries. There is not a single industry in which networking does not benefit you as a professional. And this is especially true for almost grads or recent grads who are looking to make the most of their job search processes or career development processes more generally. So I really want all of us to take the opportunity during our final terms at ArtCenter to grow and nourish the creative community that you've already developed, and identify new opportunities for networking, as well as understand how networking can benefit you within your specific industry. So early on, when we talked about developing our strategy, I mentioned that a great question to ask yourself is, what are some of the hiring standards that are expected within the industry that I'm interested in? Networking might be more or less important depending on the industry that you're working in and the role within that industry that you're seeking. And when I say less important, I don't mean that it's not important. I just mean that it may play a higher or a lower role in your hiring process, depending on the industry that you work in. Networking can also, depending on the industry that you work in, inform you of a lot of these standards and practices and help you develop that strategy that we mentioned earlier. So they all kind of tie into each other, and it's like a nice little circle, everything's related. So what can networking look like? What are some of our opportunities to network? Career chats, workshops, and panels. These are opportunities that CPD and ArtCenter on the whole tries to offer students as much as possible. Career chats are going to be opportunities where we welcome in professionals from different industries to give a little bit of an overview about their experiences in those industries, talk about opportunities for growth in those companies that they work in, and really be there to answer some burning questions that you have about what it looks like to get into those roles. Workshops and panels on professional development and learning about what hiring looks like in different industries are also incredible ways to network and start developing those connections. At all of these different opportunities, I would encourage you to connect with and reach out to the person who did that career chat or facilitated that panel on LinkedIn or via email or however you're able to get in touch with them, Even if it's just to say something like, thank you so much for that incredible presentation you gave at ArtCenter. It was so informative, and I really hope that I have the opportunity to listen to you speak again. This creates an open line of communication, communicates your appreciation, of course, and can potentially be an opportunity for you to check back in on later to say, hey, remember that chat that you gave? It was really wonderful. I was the person who asked the question about XYZ. I'm currently looking for work, and I was wondering if potentially you are hiring within your design team, or if there's somebody at your company that you could refer me to talk more in depth about opportunities that are available there. So that's one area of what networking can look like. Another area that networking can fall under is something called informational interviews. And informational interviews are going to be an incredible arsenal for that career development strategy that we talked about earlier. An informational interview is a short, often maybe one-off or few sessions opportunity to meet with a professional in your field working in a role or a type of role that you're interested in, where you get to learn about how they got to where they are, ask them questions that are directly relevant to your job search strategy or your professional development strategy, and ask if they have any advice or suggestions for getting into that industry. And that could be general, or it could be targeted specifically to the company that they work in. These informational interviews are a really fantastic way to develop that understanding of standard hiring practices in the industry, as well as what you can do in advance. So for example, if you take an informational interview with somebody at a company that you're very passionate about, and you learn in that informational interview that word of mouth and connections within the company are a really important way that people get hired, then you know from that informational interview that you really want to work on your networking skills and develop some connections in that company towards your job search process. If you learn from that informational interview that that company has a really particular way that they review portfolios and they really want to see XYZ information, then you know, as you're developing your portfolio in preparation for graduation, that it should look like this certain way or should provide this certain information. If you know through your informational interview that the company that you're interested in only opens up positions for junior design roles in September, maybe that's a specific standard that they have, then you know, okay, I'm probably not going to see open opportunities at this company immediately after I graduate if I'm graduating in the spring. But no fear, not to worry, I'll probably start to see them towards the end of summer, beginning of fall, and I can prepare myself for that process and make use of that time that I have so that I'm giving myself the best possible opportunity. Now, our next networking area is your ArtCenter community. I mentioned it earlier, but you all have an incredible umbrella of faculty members, staff, colleagues, peers, alumni that you maybe have met previously, who are all existing in your ArtCenter creative community. Plug into that community as much as you possibly can. This can be through potential mentorship or those informational interviews that we talked about, but it can also be something as simple as saying to your faculty member who you know works in the industry and has some connections, hey, I really want to talk to somebody at X company to learn more about what their hiring process is like. Do you know of anybody there that maybe I could connect with and check in with via email? It could look like letting your faculty members or your staff members know that you would really love a reference letter, that you had a really great time working with them or working for them, perhaps, and really want to be able to talk about this opportunity in future work. So would they be open to writing a reference letter for you as you're preparing to graduate? And then finally, we have Grad Show, the ultimate networking opportunity that I imagine a lot of you are already thinking about. So let's talk Grad Show, right? So Grad Show, which if you're graduating this term, you're probably already thinking about a little bit, is a celebration. It's absolutely a celebration, and I want all of you to feel so excited and congratulate you on your amazing achievements, because that's really what it is. The grad show is also a career development opportunity. It's an opportunity where you can meet industry professionals who want to hire you. This happens every year at grad show. Students who are showing at grad show meet industry professionals who are interested in hiring them. They meet industry professionals who are connected with people who might want to hire them. Information gets shared, folks swap stories, etc. So I really, really encourage everybody to take this on as a career development opportunity and a networking experience. Yes, it's a party. It's also the other. So I really encourage everybody, as you're preparing for grad show, I know that time is going to get away from you. I know everybody's going to be stressed about developing their walls. I know that we want everything to look perfect. What we also want to do, as much as we can, and making sure that we're taking care of ourselves and getting enough rest, we want to be prepared with our pitch. This is our about me, right? Who we are, what we do, why we do it, so what we're passionate about, and what we want to do, so that if somebody comes up to us at grad show and says, that's beautiful work, I'd love to know more about it, we're ready. We're not stumbling over our words or unsure of what to say. We can put out our hand, shake hands if they're comfortable with it, and introduce ourselves and say, hi, my name is Eilish. Thanks so much. That was really kind of you. I'm an illustrator and I really love to work with XYZ. What brought you to grad show tonight? What are you interested in seeing? Know that you're going to have so much opportunity to converse with different professionals, ask them about themselves, and it can be a great place to practice your networking skills, practice your elevator pitch or who you are, but also a great opportunity to share what you're interested in so that those professionals who see your work and love your work are able to share it with other folks that they know. And then this last piece down here, I really assume that it's probably pretty obvious, but I want to add it in as well. Make sure that you're prepared with opportunities for you to be contacted or ways that you can be contacted by those professionals after the fact. For a lot of you, you're going to be developing these materials in your graduating classes as part of your coursework. You're going to be making business cards or resumes or both of the above, something else. But in case it hasn't been mentioned yet, please, please, please make sure that you have some kind of contact information available for yourself at grad show that you can give out to professionals as you meet them. This could be, as I mentioned, a business card. It could be a resume with your contact info on it. Whatever way that you want to give kind of a parting gift to somebody whose material and position and expertise is of interest to you, you want to touch base with them later. You may also ask if they have a business card. Am I able to get your business card and maybe follow up after this event? Or may I add you on LinkedIn and touch base after the fact? Utilize all of these opportunities to meet and then extend those past grad show into conversations and connections. And again, this development or flourishing of creative community as much as you can. This is going to be a really, really, really essential moment to practice a lot of these skills that we're developing, but also, as I mentioned, potentially to actually get hired and get work and meet people who can refer you to things and refer you to opportunities. So don't take it lightly as a potential opportunity for employment, for advancement, for development in any way. And celebrate while also considering that fact as well. So with that said, these were some of our big areas. I wanted to give a nice little umbrella overview of some things that we think graduating students or folks almost graduating should be considering as they prepare for their graduation process. With that said, I would like to open up the floor to some questions. I'm going to stop recording at this time.